and building respect for older people. I'm coming to you today from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and want to acknowledge their elders past and present in this beautiful country that we live on. Today we're talking about how to facilitate an Old is Beautiful project. And we're really thrilled to have Narelle, Kerr and Matilda Marsh here from ADA Australia in Queensland. And we work together to roll the Old is Beautiful project out in 4 locations in Queensland. And it really has been a very exciting project. And I've loved working with Narelle and Matilda and ADA more broadly. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. So mostly you'll be hearing from them. And the final 10 minutes we'll throw open to questions. But what I wanted just to say before I hand over to Narelle and Matilda is that at Celebrate Aging, we developed the Old is Beautiful project because we recognise that beautiful is a very restraining word. It is a word that that imposes a lot of limitations and restrictions on everybody, whether you're interested in fashion and beauty or not. And we thought that reconfiguring or reimagining the word beautiful could be a really powerful way of having older people reflect on the beauty that comes with aging and the beautiful people that they are. And we were absolutely right. Evaluations of this project and the workshops in particular have shown that it has reduced internalized ageism for older people by 20%, which is incredibly positive and powerful when you think this is just a 2-hour workshop. But this work is incredibly powerful, I think, because there is something that we call icing, and there is cake as well too. So the cake is this evidence-based approach that is looking at bridging the gap between the way we know the world needs to be for older people and the way the world is. And we do that through evidence-based approaches, but particularly through art and narrative based ways of engaging the community and creating something that is really visually interesting, that sort of draws people in to a process of achieving cultural change. So it is a really beautiful project. Is incredibly powerful and effective way of combating ageism and building respect for older people. And working with ADA Australia has been an incredibly important partnership for us because we know that with the work that ADA does around preventing elder abuse, that ageism underpins much of elder abuse. So really incredibly proud of this partnership. And now going to throw open to Narelle and Matilda to tell us why they wanted to host an Old is Beautiful project or a number of projects in Queensland, what they did, what worked and what they do differently. Over to you two.
Sure. Look, I'll just start, I guess, with the sort of strategic vision we had with Old is Beautiful. So Aged and Disability Advocacy Australia, for those who don't know, is an aged care advocacy service. We support older people receiving aged care through the Australian government system with problems and issues. Part of that work is on the ground service delivery, responding to cases of elder abuse. But we've also, I guess, long been involved in national and state strategies about elder abuse awareness, education, and prevention. So when this opportunity sort of popped up, I guess we, as Catherine was saying, were really attracted to the creative approach. I mean, there's lots of different things that everybody is doing in this space to try and make a difference, but it's really the thing that appealed, I guess, is trying to change that fundamental sort of societal attitude. You know, how do we get people to think old is good? And you know, we've long been, we've thought that the work Celebrate Aging does through the Biscuit Tin and Old is Beautiful and Cardigan Pride, which is one of my favourites, we thought bold and creative approach. So that's really where you need to start if you want to change perceptions. So all of that other work is still ongoing, but this was like an added systemic approach that we could take. So that's kind of where we jumped in. We also thought it would be great to get some media attention, which is important if you're trying to change perceptions. Um, so it's slower systemic advocacy work, I guess, trying to change the tide of public opinion. Sitting in a few workshops, I realised, that I have few ageist ageist opinions myself. Like it's so embedded that it's going to take some creativity, I think, to get people moving away. So that's where we came from, and old is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for us. This year's been a great journey to be able to bring the workshops into the Queensland and into different contexts. So we'll go through what approaches we took and the communities that we've engaged with. And I guess there's some different outcomes, but also quite a lot of synergies across those different communities as well. So with Old is Beautiful, I guess there's a few different ways to approach it, but as a statewide organisation and working with Catherine, looking at different communities, different geographies, as well as different sort of cultural communities, and sort of understanding how we can engage them through the workshops, and then have a look. And I think one of the surprising things we'll talk about is that sort of ongoing engagement that some of those groups are really keen to continue with. So that's been, really a little bit of a surprise, but also really lovely to be able to look at how that might continue on. So we looked at our year. The project we have undertaken has been a sort of a year-long project, and looking at what our capacity is and what communities do we want to look at. And so there's a number of different ways you can go about it, but we could engage locally with different groups. And there was an intention at one point to really train up some of the local members there to be those facilitators of the workshops. Unfortunately, I guess within the time frame, but also our connections and understanding who was local, that wasn't the approach that was suitable for us to take this year. So Catherine was the facilitator for most of those workshops, and being able to work alongside organisations in those local areas or groups of community members in those areas. And the 4 areas we did was Brisbane, Mount Glorious, we'll get to why that was a particular one, Cairns and Winton. So a good sort of snapshot of different communities across Queensland, different geographies and different experiences of ageing and what it means to address ageism in different communities. So they're really insightful to understand what each of those communities has experienced, and individuals within those communities. So our Brisbane workshop was fantastic in that we worked really closely with Brisbane City Council. So it's a great partnership. That was one of the main strengths, I think, of a lot of these workshops, is working with the local organisation who had either links to community members or an established group that we worked with, or understanding who they could tap on the shoulder to bring into the space who would be suitable for the workshop. And knowing that it's about selling it to those individuals. Often the project itself can feel a little bit daunting for people, or they're not quite sure what it means to take part. So a lot of the conversations initially are around, taking part in a workshop, and there will be an element of, you have your photo taken, and we'll reflect on ageism and having that conversation. Some people are already quite aware of what ageism is or the impacts of that. And others, I think, take a little bit of a moment to step back and go, oh, yes, actually, I do experience that, or this is the impact it has on me and my community. So yes, this is how I would like to take part. So it's really interesting to see, what those hooks are for each of the individuals who want to partake in the workshop. But really, I think a lot of people came into it being quite thrilled and excited that they were welcomed into a space where their voice was valued and heard, and that they were going to get a photo taken of themselves, and a really lovely process to go through, being able to be supported through that. So the workshop's process was that we held that workshop for 3 hours, and throughout that workshop we had a photographer in another space next to the workshop where people could go out, have their photo taken, feeling reasonably private about it, not on display in front of the whole workshop, and have space to get in the zone and have their photo taken and come back into the workshop and participate in that process. And that process, I guess, took place over those 4 locations, slightly different for each one. In Brisbane, we held that in the Powerhouse. In Mount Glorious, it was a wonderful group of established motorcycle riders. So they all met regularly at a cafe, and that's where we held the workshop. And that's a wonderful group. That the tailoring of that workshop was more around, because mainly men. I think, was there one woman, Catherine? Yeah, one woman. So understanding what masculinity looks like in the context of aging, and finding the beauty in that as well. So that's wonderful. A Cairns workshop where we had a number of different people from different cultural backgrounds, and a Winton workshop where we had a lot of connected people, quite highly connected to different groups within Winton, coming together. And I can let Narelle talk a little bit about that with the exhibition side of things in a moment. But having set up those different workshops, the most useful thing was having those really strong connections locally, and having people on the ground who had that community connection to an established group, or to tapping people on the shoulder. I think the most wonderful thing to come out of that was to see the real glow of those participants, having participated in a process where they were given time and shown, walked through a process of self-reflection, but also being able to then note and record their perspectives on aging, and that journey of being through the workshop, as well as living and aging in their context and in their community. So some wonderful reflections on the aging process, or the value, the things that they hold dear. As we can see in some of these pictures, those reflections are wonderful, and they make a really beautiful asset, which is that second element of the project. Having the asset developed and being able to share that has then gone on to have another flow on of conversations. So for example, in the Brisbane context, we held the workshop, a report was written, collating all of those perspectives and the pictures. And we also then were able to use those pictures to have an exhibition. We've had that exhibited in the Brisbane Square Library, and that was wonderful. They had that up for a bit over a month. I think they were so positive about it. They kept it there for a few extra weeks after the month of October, the Seniors Month celebrations. And going in there to take them down not long ago, there were a lot of comments of how wonderful it was. So that was a really great reflection on community members being in that space and being able to see the photos and have such a positive response to it. And then those photos then were taken to the City Hall for a couple of weeks while our seniors concerts were on. So just being able to work really well with a local contact to be able to put all that together was really lovely. A lovely collaborative environment to bring that together. And out of that Brisbane process, we've got a number of participants, I'd say almost all of them within that group, are really keen to continue those conversations and are continuing those conversations. We also held an event within the library to sort of launch that exhibition on World Ageism Awareness Day. And that was a wonderful opportunity for participants to be able to share their experiences of the project, as well as things that they're continuing to do and say within communities and within their own spaces to continue this work. So I think they feel very empowered and fueled up with a lot of energy to be able to then take that out and continue doing the work. That's probably something that was a little bit surprising and not something that we had prepared for, but in responding to people's calls for information and things, they're you know, looking at how they would present that information themselves through their own voice and continue on those conversations. Some of the awesome things too was the bonding of the groups. So people who were learning from each other within that space, people come in with all sorts of different perspectives on aging, and being able to analyze and look at their own internalized ageism as well as the sort of systemic issues and ageism symptoms, I guess, within community that they're dealing with, and the different perspectives and approaches to that within their own community, to come together in a safe space to reflect on that and look at how they could, you know, flourish within those communities is really exciting, and a special space really for people to be able to have those conversations. There's a lot of that, I guess, that capacity building. So people coming out of the workshop with more ability to be able to talk on the topics and acknowledge them and recognize them. And then that flow-on effect of being able to display the imagery and promote the imagery through sort of digital displays or in-person physical displays has had that flow-on effect to have those conversations more broadly. So different exhibitions in different spaces, such as libraries. We have a rolling PowerPoint presentation, for example, that has been promoted through the state library so that the libraries around Queensland have access to that. So there's just the ability to be able to use those assets as a flow on has been incredible to see where that goes and where that flows on from. Narelle, I don't know if you've got any comments around other parts of the process, and particularly, I guess, the Winton one. We've had the recent exhibition out there as well.
Yeah, and I think that probably goes to the differences between the communities. You know, Winton's a small rural community, and they're all pretty tough out there, pretty matter of fact, get on with it. But it was interesting when we had the exhibition, all of the participants turned up, and they were all really enthusiastic about the process and what they'd done, and were happy to talk about their story, which I thought's pretty big for a rural community like Winton. We're still getting thank yous from people about the exhibition in the library, and I think that was a demonstration of where we got a lot of praise for working locally. So working with the PHN, who happened to know everybody, or maybe was related to everybody, working with the library. The library really is a hub for people in Winton, not least because it's air conditioned. It was very hot. So that was important to them. A lot of people came up to me and said, oh, you know, you've done such a great job. We really appreciate how you've worked with us locally and not just come in like a group from the city and told us this is what we're doing. You really went from the ground up. So that was important. And I just had another thought, really. The photographer. So is very important, obviously, to get the end product. So we were really lucky to, Catherine managed to organise John Elliott, who's quite a famous photographer for Winton. And so the different photographers had a slightly different approach. John Elliott's much more about the face and what you can see and read in a face, but equally the other photos that were done in Brisbane from Jade Ellis, they were a bit more of a distant perspective, but stunning as well, really captured the essence of people. So I think that that's a really important part of the project. If people aren't sort of struck by the finished product, then it's not going to be as effective. But yes, we managed to source really great photographers, so that's important.
Yeah, I agree. And that creates that appeal to a wider audience, and to be able to then use them in different scenarios, that creates that conversation piece for different audiences. And I think there's also a real a wonderful conversation between generations that happens too in those spaces. So people really acknowledging and celebrating the imagery, but then also taking time to read and reflect on the project as well. I guess,
actually, in winter, no, just share a story. So we were setting up in the library the afternoon before, and they had all the kids coming in, after school, and just on that intergenerational thing, one of the kids read, "Oh, there's Nanny," it was
nice.
pointing out to all of her friends, "That's my Nanny." So yeah, it was a really good intergenerational project in that way.
That's wonderful. And I think that's it. Yeah, having visibility in high traffic spaces where people are seeing different pictures that they might not normally see, which is wonderful, and a wonderful representation of aging. It's great. So yeah, I think it's been a really fantastic opportunity for us to connect in locally and continue to use the stories from this project, as well as obviously the imagery, in different engagement approaches. So as Narelle outlined at the beginning, we do a lot of that systemic advocacy around elder abuse, and how we can prevent that and respond to that within our communities, as well as sort of individual advocacy. And I know that within a lot of the sector that we engage with, they're very excited about some of the imagery and the pictures and the project, because it is another opportunity to have those conversations through a different lens. And that's been really great. Everything from, we work with on different working groups with people like the police and state government, as well as other local government and other agencies. So being able to use this as a really accessible tool to start having more of those conversations, or to continue having those conversations, but in a really accessible and positive manner. It's been a really great to see those assets being developed, and the willingness and the rapport with community to be able to continue that as well. What would we do differently? I think the main two things was Cairns was the one workshop we didn't actually work with a local partner, and it was great, but wasn't as successful as the others. So I think that's a really big learning of having more of that local connections, and maybe having that time to build that rapport and understand where the not just the desire, but the capacity and the resourcing is for each of those communities. So some, Brisbane City Council, for example, had a lot of individual workers who were on board, but also resourcing to be able to support that, whereas others might not have come forward in a way that meant that we had a secure exhibition space, for example, or workshop participants and those kinds of things. So sussing that out and looking at sort of all of the flow on of the whole workshop. It's not just holding the workshop, but it's about how do we exhibit that afterwards, if that's the way I'd like to go. I think that's a good thing to look at, the sort of lifespan of the project. And then engaging media earlier as well. It's an awesome opportunity for media to take part and sort of promote it, especially with the pictures being so beautiful. But yeah, I think that was a bit of a challenge as well, bringing them on board and being able to use that as an opportunity. And then just understanding those opportunities to exhibit, and they may be formal or they may be less formal, and having different opportunities to promote and build that local rapport with the project as well. Narelle, do you have anything else to add? But I think,
no, just
anything else I've missed?
On the media, yes, in hindsight, maybe if we had a plan, approach someone for all 4 workshops and photos, etc. If you do it per event, you're at risk then of whatever the other news grab is of the day. Like, you sort of have to slot in. So I think, I would have tried to encourage a media engagement on a holistic level of the whole project, because they really the ones who did engage in different areas got really great stories and were really happy with it.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Matilda and Narelle, so much. I loved hearing about the project all over again. And I think one of the things that I really want to encourage people to look at, and we'll send something through to everyone, is that something that we did differently in Queensland with these 4 projects is we wrote up a report or a resource from each one of them, and that's something that we'll encourage with every other project, because what it did, I think in our previous projects, we've taken the portraits, there's been an exhibition or they've been shared on social media and they're really beautiful, but then it's sort of almost as though it disappears. And what's happened with those reports is there's this beautiful legacy, and they are the most incredibly positive, uplifting reports, because basically, other than a forward, or no, I think there's a forward from Jeff, your CEO, but then the whole resource is made up of the portrait of the older person on one side of the page, and the other side of the page has their perspective on what beautiful means to them and what makes them beautiful. So it's incredibly uplifting, and I think would be a really useful tool for other older people to pick up and to start thinking about their aging in really positive ways, which is not a message that older people get very often. So I think that's one of the things that I would encourage everyone to do. And I think something else that we learned from Queensland that was incredibly powerful, particularly with the bikers or the men on their bikes on the mountain, was some of them were very forthright in their feedback of don't like this concept of beautiful, not beautiful, never have been, don't like it, not happy. And so we had these amazing conversations. And what we learned to say to people is that this is not a cult. You don't have to sign on to say you agree. We're not asking you to get a tattoo. This is an invitation to think about your aging in a different way. And so beautiful is, if you like, a provocation. And so many people then just said, well, no, I can't. I'm not beautiful, never have been. And we say to them, so what does beautiful mean to you? And they'd say, it's the sunset or it's the trees. And what does it mean for you in relation to people? It's about people who are generous and kind. Is that how you describe yourself? Yes. Does it matter whether you feel you're physically beautiful or not? And people would go, well, no, it's about who I am as a person. So it's sort of almost like a reclaiming of that concept of beautiful. And as I said to you before, I think we are so shaped at whether you're into beauty and fashion or not, we are so shaped by this view that beautiful is young, white, thin females who are gorgeous, but they are not the only people who are beautiful. And reclaiming of this is about really creating space for everybody, of every body shape and size and ability and nationality. So I think that was one of the things that was really, really beautiful about the Queensland projects. And I think the other thing that we decided to do as well was to take an intergenerational approach. And that came from the older people who said, I'm here to be part of this project because I've got a granddaughter who's in her early 20s and she's gorgeous and she's really struggling with who she is. She doesn't feel beautiful and I want to be a role model for her. I want to go back and say to her that Nan did this and you can too. And so what we decided to do this time was to ask all of the older people to share a message to a younger person who doesn't feel good about their body. And we know it's a real problem with young people around body positivity, but we don't think about body positivity in older people. We think about ageism, but it's the same issue about people not feeling good about their bodies across the life spectrum. And there's a real connection that can be made between older people and younger people. And somebody asked the question in the chat, why the black and white images? And that's a really great question. What we wanted to do was to create some images that were incredibly powerful and sort of stood out as being distinctively Old is Beautiful project. And we know that, in our experience in the past, when we've taken black and white images of older people, that sometimes older people say to us, I prefer myself in colour. And we know that part of that comes from black and white imagery can be really textured. So, you know, if you've got creases or lines in your face or something like that, it shows up all the textures on your face. And that was something that we wanted to celebrate with this project. And so we ask everybody to agree to the black and white photographs before they take part. And we think that is an incredibly important part of the project. But today, what we really wanted to do was to, I guess, celebrate the amazing work that has been done in Queensland. We learned so much from, you know, the workshop in Brisbane. How many people are in Brisbane? It must be, is it millions?
2.5, I think.
2.5 million people in Brisbane and 800 people in Winton. And the workshops, they taught us so much about aging and sense of community. People told us in Brisbane, it's not okay to be an older person. I go to the deli and I feel like I get ignored. You know, I get so many messages that my old age is not a good thing. And on the other hand, when we went to Winton, people said, it's okay to be old in Winton. We're celebrated for who we are, you know, that our age doesn't define us. And there was such a massive difference in people's internalized ageism. So we learnt so much from older people in these workshops. And what we did as well too, just thinking about the work that ADA does around preventing elder abuse, that what we did was shared a lot of information in these workshops with older people about ageism and about elder abuse and their rights and the services they were entitled to. So that's an incredibly important part of it. We're going to open up for questions in a moment, but what I want to do before we finish is say that that we have an online toolkit for anyone who is interested in hosting an Old is Beautiful project. There's an online toolkit. There's a very small licensing fee because we're a charity. And it's got step-by-step instructions. It's got all the templates you need. So like there's a photographer's agreement. There's a flyer and an information sheet and consent form that you can download as a Word document, put your own logo in, localize it to your own context. There's evaluation tools, there's tips on exhibitions. Everything you need is up there. And I think one of the things that Rochelle and I are learning of late as well too is that gathering stories from older people. In the past, it was, you know, taping and transcribing. Now it's incredibly simple because there are amazing apps on smartphones that will allow you to record someone's perspective and have it transcribed as well, all free. So we will send you the information on hosting an Old is Beautiful project. It's really as simple as signing on to the online Thinkific platform and all the information's there for you. And Rochelle Beatty's here online with us as well too. Rochelle is our education coordinator and we're available to answer people's questions as well too. So we're going to stop recording now and throw it open to people. If there's anyone who wants to make a comment